Welcome to the Plant a Trillion Trees podcast. I'm Eva Monheim.
And I'm Hal Rosner. We are both certified arborists through the International Society of Arboriculture. The purpose of our podcast is to encourage tree planting and proper tree care for our urban forests, which include neighborhoods, parks, and other open spaces.
We will also cover a myriad of tree topics, including the important role trees play in relationship to the climate crisis. Thank you for joining us.
Verdant Earth Educators provides dynamic in-person training and online learning opportunities for environmental and horticultural businesses. Owned by ISA-certified arborists and former university faculty, the Verdant Earth Educator team provides consultations on tree care and recommends climate-resilient opportunities for your valued green spaces. Verdant Earth Educators is all about seeding knowledge for success. Find Verdant Earth Educators at verdanteartheducators.com.
Monheim Microphones designs and handcrafts top-tier studio microphones and preamps right here in the United States in Hollywood, California. Their incredible line of innovative microphones and designs are used around the world by everyone from podcasters to top-charting record producers and singers. Monheim Microphones' unparalleled excellence. MonheimMicrophones.com. This podcast is being recorded on June 14th, 2024. Patricia Gallagher is Professor Emerita of Civil, Architectural, and Environmental Engineering at Drexel University. She earned bachelor's degrees in civil engineering and geological sciences from Rutgers University, a master's in civil engineering from Ohio State University, and a Ph.D. in civil engineering from Virginia Tech. Her research expertise centers on geotechnical and geoenvironmental engineering and sustainability. At Drexel, Trish taught courses in civil and environmental engineering, geology, and sustainability. Her course in sustainability, titled Incorporating Sustainability Principles in Design, was inspired by her desire to teach design from a holistic, regenerative perspective that restores ecological balance and health in communities and ecosystems. She began volunteering with the Abington Township Shade Tree Commission, commonly known as STC, in 2019, became an acting commissioner in 2021, and was officially appointed to the STC in 2022. Currently, she co-chairs the STC. Our second guest is John Kennedy. Since 2011, John Kennedy has been volunteering with the Abington Township Shade Tree Commission as an appointed commissioner and currently serves as co-chair. He has been an active Pennsylvania Horticultural Society tree tender since 2008. John regularly takes on leadership role in formulating and delivering STC programs. His volunteer emphasis has been with park and public space tree planting with the Tree Vitalized PHS Tree Tenders Bare Root Tree Program, leading community volunteers to plant over 300 trees in parks and other public spaces in Abington Township. John's commitment to the treescapes around us has inspired him to educate others of the importance of trees in our environment, conducting hands-on training through demonstration and coaching on how to plant, prune, and care for trees. John returned to school in 2006 as a part-time student to study horticulture, and in 2015 completed his degree at Temple University's School of Environmental Design in Ambler, Pennsylvania. He also holds a certificate in horticultural therapy. Welcome to the Plant a Trillion Trees podcast, Patricia and John. We're delighted that you could be with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Happy to be here.
It's been a long time coming.
Yes.
Probably about 18 months of putting it together. It was so great to see you guys. And thanks for taking making the special accommodations to go to Abington Township's meeting room and catching up with us from that facility. We'd like to get to know you a little bit. Can you tell us about your backgrounds and where did you grow up? And then most importantly, how did you find your way to trees and urban forestry?
I grew up in Plymouth Meeting, outside as a kid in trees all the time. Certainly some of my fondest memories are climbing a silver maple tree in our backyard. And I think it is still there today. So spending time with my dad in the yard and just as he would transplant seedlings and find places to put these trees in a pretty small yard. We had a lot of fun doing that. For me, the tree journey really has always been there. In about 2011, I began working with the Shade Tree Commission as a volunteer. Prior to that, I had found myself returning to school in 2006 at Drexel University and working on a degree in horticulture. And that's actually had Eva as my instructor, my teacher in several classes. And through that journey, working together, really just as I then moved on to the Shade Tree Commission, also as a PHS tree tender. I did that certification in about 2008 or so, and have ever since found a way to volunteer and be helpful.
For me, I grew up in Chatham, New Jersey, and my parents' property actually abutted a green area. We also had a lot of trees in our yard. And I'm from the generation where our parents kicked us out of the house at 8 o'clock in the morning and said, see you for dinner. So I spent my growing up years outside, riding bicycles, climbing trees, poking around in the woods. And my family tended to be an outdoorsy kind of family. So we always took our family vacations to campgrounds, various campgrounds all over the place. That is just in my upbringing and my DNA. When I became an adult, I became an avid gardener. And then I was influenced to become a native gardener and do habitat restoration in my backyard when I read Doug Ptolemy's book. My career is in engineering and geology, and I spent 20 years in academia. And that really led me to encourage interest among my students in links between the natural environment and the built environment. So kind of an overarching principle of how do we incorporate the natural environment into the built environment. I became a Shade Tree Commission volunteer in 2019 and became an acting commissioner in 2021. And I was appointed permanently to a permanent position, I think, in 2022. And sometime during the pandemic, I became a PHS tree tender, but I couldn't tell you which year, but it was virtual training. So I have a very strong interest in restoring habitats within our community and within our neighborhoods so that we can all live happier and healthier lives. I would say that's pretty much a driving force for my activities now.
One of the things that I noticed in your teaching is the idea of regenerative and sustainability. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because that plays an important role in what you do for the township.
Absolutely. So a long time ago, before we learned how to condition indoor spaces, we sited our houses so that we could take advantage of shade and take advantage of breezes and, natural cooling and heating. And then as we got better at conditioning our indoor environment, we essentially moved inside, right? And we stopped thinking about the outside. And that, I think, is partly why so many of us are completely disconnected from our environment. So what I did in my courses, especially as I got more senior and had more flexibility to develop courses that were along my interests, was to try and develop courses to start looking at a piece of property as a whole place and to develop a sense of place about a piece of land so that you could actually live within that property and plant things that would help sustain you, but also take advantage of those techniques that we used a very long time ago, right? We are now reinventing the wheel with this idea of regenerative design. This is what humans evolved to do all those millennia ago.
A good thing. I know even when John was at the university, you could see that the old farm was positioned in a way to use the natural environment to cool the houses. In other words, the houses were heavy stone, but the narrowest part of the house faced north and south, and the widest parts were east and west. So you could take advantage of that westerly breeze in the summertime and also take advantage of that light in the early morning hours in the east. We kind of have forgotten that. Usually they would put a shade tree on the west side of the house if you really studied old farms so that the house would be cool during the summer, but it was a deciduous tree, usually a sycamore or a native tree. and they would drop its leaves in the winter time so that you had a western sunlight on the house in the wintertime so the house would warm up. We kind of have forgotten all those things. Even greenhouses were designed to face north and south and in east and west, the length of the greenhouses, so that you could take full advantage of that full sun throughout the day to have your plants take advantage of that sunlight and not have to use lights to light the greenhouse in the evening hours because you took advantage of the sun during the day. So really important that you're talking about that, because if we look at that history and what you might be teaching in your classes, we could really learn a lot from that and really save energy.
Save energy, be more comfortable, take advantage of natural light, be healthier, all of those things. It's not a new idea. It's just that we tend to forget our old ideas and we need to bring them back around from time to time. So
maybe we could apply what we just talked about to our listeners in terms of letting them know a little bit more about Abington as a community. Seems like it's a mix of old and new neighborhoods, but tell us what you know about Abington, the neighborhood that you live in today.
We have a population of about 60,000 people, and our population is largely white with some African American and Asian and other races mixed in there. And I would characterize our township as economically diverse, and that it ranges from, say, lower middle class to upper middle class, depending on where you're located in the township. And it is a mix of very old and very new. So we do have very well-established neighborhoods. My neighborhood was developed in the 1950s and is a little bit more densely populated. Some of the other neighborhoods were developed later and have more property. John, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'm in more of the township center, where the houses date back to turn of the century. My house in particular is 1920. So it is quite a bit different. There's quite a bit of diversity in terms of the timing of construction and the types of houses. But it's really that diversity and that wide-ranging type of property that makes this a really diverse community. And there are lots of different people, a very popular place to move to out of more urban areas, people heading into the suburbs. It's a popular stop.
We do have a lot of migrants from Philadelphia.
You have a very diverse community. And the other thing, too, is that you have people who really valued the train and public transportation. So that's a really strong suit for Abington. I used to live next door in Cheltenham Township, so I did a lot of crossover work between the two townships. And I will say that was a real key thing with people being able to walk to the train, walk to the bus, feel comfortable in a community where they can actually get into town very quickly and not have to take a car. So that was another thing, too, which really made your township ideal for many, many people to live in.
Sure. Yes,
definitely.
Sure.
Well, one of the reasons I bought the house I did is because it was 0.8 miles from one train station and 1 mile from another train station. So I could take two different lines to get to the city.
Lovely.
Right. Exactly.
Well, I appreciate that Abington then is diverse, so socioeconomically. And because a lot of times, you go to major cities throughout the nation, and the wealthy, prosperous communities are the ones oftentimes that have the great ordinances and the great canopy as a result. And it seems to me that the diversity that you've just laid out, but it's almost like a ordinance for the rest of us, if you know what I mean. I live in Philadelphia. We have similar challenges. So we want to see that canopy scarcity is addressed at all levels. So when we talk about this ordinance, give us an overview. You guys have been involved so passionately for so long. Tell us about the importance of a tree ordinance. What motivated you to get into it?
First of all, we're going to have to mention our former chair, Rita Stevens, who had and continues to have a very strong vision for trees and the environment. So Rita was very much a leader in gathering the community together to help work towards a master tree plan and an ordinance. And these things are really important for many reasons. So one, I think we need champions in our communities to protect the natural environment. We also have a population that's largely uneducated about the role of trees. as I mentioned before, many of us are very disconnected from our environments. We spend 90% of our time indoors. People are afraid of trees. They don't want to rake leaves. They don't understand necessarily the value of that the trees provide in cleaning the air and cleaning the water and providing a healthy environment in which to live. We talked about having a lot of migrants from the city. People who live in the city aren't used to having a lot of trees around on their property, and they don't know how to care for trees or spend the time or have the money or want to spend the money on caring for trees. And so part of the need for tree plans and tree ordinances is to protect the existing canopy and also reverse that canopy loss that we've been faced with and continue to face every day. And I think another key point is that in our township and many townships surrounding us, we have a lot of mature trees and they're ending their natural lifespans. They're getting older. They require more time and effort to keep them alive. They're more stressed from the changes in the environment. And so we need to succession plant. So I think that's another key point. And this is where a tree plan and a tree ordinance really helps guide that process. Do you have stuff you want to add, John?
No, I think when you look at the tree, what work has been done with the tree ordinance process, which has been going on for really much more than a decade, and how that evolved into the concept of creating this master tree action plan that we have been part of, and how that has really kind of freed us to really take action and work with the commissioners and others within our government to make these kinds of improvements and changes. No doubt, government is kind of glacial at its pace of movement, and the success that we've been able to see within the Master Tree Action Plan and the ground that has covered, and really the attention that it has gotten has really been tremendous, particularly compared to the trying to make a change in ordinance in our actual township ordinances.
Right. I think that's absolutely right on.
You know what I think is really unique about Abington and the surrounding townships, you all have a really good relationship with one another. And when one sees one doing something, the other one jumps on and maybe does something else, maybe not the same exact thing, but maybe one's doing riparian work while the other one's doing street tree, restoration, or another one's concerned about floodwaters. And again, they're going to be looking at, their flooding and where they should be planting trees. And this, I think, is critical for a region. You're not in isolation as a township. You have to be worried about what the other townships are doing because it's going to come downstream, or what you do is going to go downstream further. And that all plays into one another. And for what I know about the townships, including Abington, they are real leaders in putting things forward to the community and to the communities around them as well. And I think that that's where you get a really good, strong ability to put an ordinance together, because you're not only just thinking of yourself, because you think about the larger picture of the region. And I know that's true with pretty much all the townships around the city of Philadelphia. They have that feeling, that we're in the Delaware River Basin, and we are putting into the system with especially the W4, the M4, the M4, municipal water. Mm-hmm. And that whole thing just has changed how the communities work with one another. And if you have something in your township that you can afford to do and other townships might not be able to, I know that you guys share.
Right.
You share what you do. And that's critical for making critical community.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have to commend you for that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thanks.
I wonder, before we move on, by way of definitions, can you give us the distinction between a tree ordinance program and your master tree plan, just for people that might be listening for the first time? What's the distinction?
Absolutely. So a tree ordinance is a set of rules that the township adopts and makes law. So it governs what trees you can take down, whether you need permits for taking down trees, how many trees you need to plant to replace the trees you take down, et cetera. So it's the rules and regulations that support the tree policy. we have a draft tree ordinance that we're working to get through the system. And this is part of the thing that takes a very long time to get through and to get public support and commissioner support, government support, et cetera. So we're well on our way into that process. But as part of putting forth the tree ordinance, we also did this master tree plan. So we did an urban canopy analysis. We got funding from Tree Vitalize, and we did this urban canopy analysis. And then based on the results of that, what we did was put together strategies and priorities for taking care of our trees and growing our urban forests. So the Master Tree Action Plan that was adopted by the Board of Commissioners contained a draft tree ordinance that we're working to pass. But the plan itself is like a comprehensive plan, a Vision 2035 that is aspirational, or an open space plan that is aspirational about what the township is going to do. So our master tree plan contains a set of guidelines and strategies and aspirations. The government is not required to enact this. So it's a vision document and a set of guidance for how we move forward over the next 10 years in our township with respect to trees.
That's very helpful. Are there any particular parts of the ordinance that you're getting pushback on that are particularly difficult? Ordinances have been around for a while. Why is this one taking so long to get through?
Well, I don't know how to really answer that specifically, but I can, one of the things I can give an example of, for instance, the ordinance as it had been worked on many, many years ago. Many of those, those political persons involved in the process in the township have moved on. So I think it's interesting how we have had, some of us as volunteers have been around through a couple of different sets of legislators. And in fact, Josh Shapiro was involved early on in the process in his role as a state representative. So that's how long ago it was. So I think it tends to get wrapped up in a lot of discussion about land development. One of the challenges in our township for sure is, and many in the area, it's essentially completely developed. There's very little land that can be developed further. So basically these are the ordinance and how it impacts changes in land areas. Some of the residential areas where they're trying to put in multiple housing and things like that. This ordinance, of course, supports that in terms of what has to be done related to trees and landscaping and other requirements.
I want to add to that. Abington Township has been in the process for the last probably 5 years, and COVID really disrupted it, of updating all of their various aspirational plans. So they're in the middle of, they're at the end of a comprehensive plan revision. We had a new open space plan that was adopted last year. We have the master tree plan. And so I think the intention of the township is that they want to minimize the number of code revisions. And so they're gathering this body of aspirational plans and then distilling that into one zoning and code revision. So it's partly this process of government taking a long time to get things done. And we want the government to be deliberate and thoughtful when they're making changes, right? We don't want just willy-nilly changes that aren't well thought out. But that whole process of thinking it through, the whole process of gathering public input, that takes a lot of time. And so I think you can blame COVID for part of it, but I also think it's partly the process of government. You have to be patient, very, very patient.
How do you, as a community, gather the data from the residents? Do you have charrettes? Do you have, meetings at a library? Do you invite people to the township building and say, come on out, we're having this meeting and we want to get everybody's input? If you could share that with the listeners, we would really appreciate that.
For developing the master tree plan, that was happening at the same time that we were doing the beginning part of the comprehensive plan revision. And so as part of the comprehensive plan revision, we had a series of public outreach events. And what we did was invite the community to come to various community centers, and we held these open meetings. And some of them were like similar to a charrette format. Some of them were just informational meetings and took public input. And that was a way that we gathered information for the master tree plan. We also worked with the Environmental Advisory Council, again, with a group of people who are like-minded. So perhaps a little biased group, right? The Environmental Advisory Council really likes trees as well, right? But we reached out to the watershed organizations, the EAC, the Planning Commission, and we interviewed a lot of people just informally as well, especially like Rita Stevens is very much a consensus builder and a person who does outreach and has lots of connections. And so is able to gather a lot of information. She lived in the township for 30 plus years, I believe. Yeah. Her kids were raised here. She knew a lot of people. I'm a transplant. I don't know that many people. So it was really helpful to have somebody with that level of depth of experience in the community to be able to help us.
I feel comfortable. I had a pleasure of working with Rita way back when.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that was really critical for getting this whole snowball moving was the Main Street Manager program. And that really galvanized, and it was all around, it had to do with the train stations and, you know, how to revitalize and regenerate train communities. And it started, you know, on the Main Street, you know, are we going to put trees on the Main Street and so on and so forth. And then it just kind of worked its way out. And of course, there was a major flood in Abington in the 1990s. And we had just planted all the trees in Keswick Village, and they were all uprooted by this huge storm that came through. Oh, and I remember the action that was taken after that. And it was like full on action from that point on. And I don't ever remember the tree and the green organization stopping after that. They realized how important it was to have some type of tree plan or some type of open space plans, some type of commitment by the community to make that happen. And I think that that's really a critical thing. And Rita, she's awesome.
Yes. Yeah. So Rita relocated to be closer to her grown children and her grandchildren. And as soon as she got herself established in her new community, you know, she joined the tree board. And they had their first tree giveaway in a long time this past spring. So Rita continues her journey just in a different locality.
Yeah, what an inspiration.
That's fun. Yeah. That's fun.
You know, I was reviewing my notes prior to us getting together, and I don't mean to put you on the spot. I meant to double check for what Abington currently has as far as canopy cover and what your aspirations are for canopy cover in the future. But I don't mean to put you on the spot if you don't have those numbers.
You mean the percentage of tree canopy cover, which you're talking about, the percentage of tree canopy cover.
Well, John and I both brought a copy of the master tree plan with us. I think it's located in the very beginning of it, in the introduction section. So maybe it's here. Our average canopy coverage in 2004 was 48%, and that had declined to 42% in 2017, which is when the LIDAR data was used to do this assessment. So when we did the calculations, I think that equated to 420 acres or about 1 in 8 trees over that time period. So it's alarming, the canopy decline. And that has just continued since this snapshot. So it's probably closer to a 10% decline. You know, it just continues.
You know, part of that whole assessment using the LIDAR data really shone a light very specifically on how the canopy has been lost more extensively in the lower economic areas. And I think it would be probably typical to think like, you know, in more concentrated, densely populated housing zones and the economic development areas, it really was stark. I don't have that number exactly, but when you look at that kind of data really influenced, I think, to a large extent, how quickly our township commissioners bought into this and adopted and were really involved. I mean, it's been something that has been kind of a focus of ours as we have developed our tree giveaway program And the first few times concentrating the giveaway in those neighborhoods. So when we do the tree giveaway, we don't necessarily just, you have to come to the township, but we actually go out into the various neighborhoods. So we've had a few different opportunities to do that and partner with the NAACP and the Willow Grove chapter and work with the folks there to try and get these trees. But just to say the tree canopy loss of that 6% or so, 7% is tremendous. But when you see how extensive it has been in some areas, it's amazing. It's alarming.
On these giveaways, do you see an increase in interest in those giveaways and more people asking for trees?
Yes. I mean, it's really, we started out, I think, with a couple hundred trees, 100 trees, actually years ago doing just 30 trees. We're up to 100 trees and then 200 trees. And we actually tried to achieve a 400 tree giveaway last fall.
On a rainy, cold fall day.
Perfect.
One of the things we know for sure is people like to plant, and I'm sure you have this experience too, that they're excited about planting and getting outside in the spring. But when it comes to fall, even though we found that to be a much better time to plant trees, people aren't necessarily as enthusiastic. But we're very happy with the fact that the interest has continued. It's definitely grown. We really were limited by how much we can do in a capacity as a volunteer group. We've been able to get funding, some funding in the way of grants and matching funding from the township. So that has not been an issue. It's really just been the scale at which we can give these out. But interest is there for sure.
Yes, they have been extremely popular and continue to be extremely popular. And John and I actually met with the director of Parks and Recreation yesterday, and she said she gets calls all the time about the free tree giveaway, and even from other communities that actually don't have tree giveaways. The other thing to point out is that these are not little 1-foot trees. These are 5-gallon trees.
One gallon.
Yes. So there are significant trees that will still take time to really grow and start to provide shade. But they're a good sized tree that we're giving away. So we have been very fortunate to have the financial support from some grants, but also from the township. They have really stepped up and continued to fund this.
Do the schools help with your programs? Because I know they have to do a certain amount of volunteer hours to graduate. And I'm wondering if you tapped into that at all.
It's interesting. Historically, we've had some great relationships with various teachers and different programs. I have to say, just recently, we haven't had as much, but we have had a really consistent support and relationship with various Boy Scout troops in the area. They have been great with Eagle Scout projects or the like. We're always in a mode of trying to improve and increase our relationship with the township, the school district.
We've also worked, sorry to interrupt, John. I just want to put a plug in there for the Abington High School Environmental Science Club, because they have worked with us a lot to not just plant trees, but tend trees as well. So
wonderful. That's wonderful.
Yeah. As well as the community college, Monaco Community College, had a good relationship with them too.
Wonderful.
Oh, interesting. Right. So that speaks well of Monaco Community College, because if I'm correct, right, they're not in Abington Township, right? Aren't they? Some distance away.
They're good distance.
Yeah.
Although you do have Penn State Abington.
Yeah, you have Penn State Abington. That's
Ogons. Yeah.
Ogons to Abington now. Not Ogons.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, don't call it Ogons.
Yeah, just to get back to the tree planting then, I think you were starting to say they're sizable trees, sound like maybe they're 1 inch in diameter, and are they in the fabric bags or the hard plastic buckets? Or?
No, the fabric bags. We have been mainly working with the Tree Authority.
Okay, great.
We, of course, have had Hassan on the program too, and he's been a great partner with us. In fact, we've even gotten to the point where we're starting to give him some suggestions, and he's planning ahead on what to plant.
That's great.
Plant.
And the tree bags are fabulous.
They are the best thing that I've ever used. I mean,
They are, yeah.
Fantastic, and we recycle them. I mean, we've been able to return back to the Tree Authority over 50% of the bags each time.
Wow.
Wow.
We had to take a truckload up. So that's really been a great thing too. So it's reduced the waste from the planting and improved.
Those are the ones with the Velcro tearaways?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, fantastic.
He does a great job. He really tries. And the best part about those is you don't have to do any tree root correction because they already grow perfectly. in those,
Yeah, it's a big step.
Right.
That's a tough thing to get through to folks. Nobody wants to be tearing apart a root ball of a tree.
Right.
They tend to just plop it right in the ground.
Yeah.
If it's all surrounding, it's not good.
Well, the other thing with the root bags is that they're not real big and clunky and cumbersome. You don't need to have 5 people moving like a ball. They're easy to move and I guess easy for your township to pick up in a truck. It makes a huge difference when you're working, and the lighter, the easier it is for people to plant. The more they want to plant and the more willing they are to do things and help, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. We have a lot of repeat interest.
That's wonderful.
So
That's wonderful.
Yeah, we've you'd think we were, selling tickets to some very popular concert, Taylor Swift concert or something. I mean, we've had people lining up at 6 a.m. in lines.
That's only a slight exaggeration. By like 8 o'clock or 8:30, the tree giveaways start at 9. We have long lines by 8 or 8:30. It's incredible.
And what type of trees are you planting? What type of trees do people really have an affinity for?
Great question, because of course we're trying to get folks to plant shade trees.
Right.
And of course, many homeowners want a front lawn ornamental tree like a dogwood or redbuds, etc. So we've been able to have a variety. They're all native trees, of course, and so we try to add something new each time to see how it goes and get feedback. Typically, what we would do is we do allow each homeowner to take as many as 2 trees, but if they take 2 trees, they have to take at least 1 shade tree.
Gotcha.
So that's worked out very well. Where if they can get a dogwood or a redbud, but they're going to need to take a swamp white oak for the backyard or wherever they can find a spot for it. And that's really worked out well. In fact, many of the folks that are utilizing the program have taken 2 shade trees and even come back for 2 more. They have large properties. There's certainly a lot of properties in Abington that have multiple acres to them. And folks are looking at restoring forested wooded areas around their home.
And we also switch it up a little bit each tree giveaway so that we don't always have the same trees, so that we get some diversity in the re-canopy process within the townships. So we do a lot of oaks and maples, but we've done carpinus, sourwood, catalpa, and I'm not remembering them all.
Black gum is a big one.
Yes. So each time we switch it up a little bit and we try to make sure we're getting a variety for homeowners to choose, but also diversity within the township of our tree cover.
Now, if somebody wants more than 2 trees, and are they paying for these trees, or are these for free?
The trees are free.
Okay. Now, what if somebody wanted to pay the township for more than 2 trees? Can they do that?
Yeah, we have not embarked on that yet. There's a lot of discussion about that.
I think that's going to be the next hot topic.
Yes, but here's the thing, Eva. If they want 2 trees and they can only get 2 trees, then in the spring, in the fall, they can get 2 more trees. And next spring, they can get 2 more trees. And next fall, they can get 2 more trees. And so they don't have to pay for them if they're willing to be patient and to make sure they sign up for it the first day that it opens. When we open up registration for these tree giveaways, it's usually fully subscribed in less than a week.
Wow.
It's incredible. There's incredible demand.
We're also, one of the things we have done, not beginning with the second giveaway, is including all the deer protection that's needed. So anyone that has, depending on the size of the tree, we're providing trunk protectors as well as actual metal caging, the stakes, etc. That's actually been a fairly big expense in terms of fabricating these cages and then also, purchasing the material and fabricating it. But that, I think, has been helpful. I mean, it's people are going to need it anyway. I mean, there's so much deer pressure in most of the areas that for the first several years, of course, they're going to need that. And that's been very helpful.
And I just want to give one more plug there. We also have started giving out lawn signs. So we printed some lawn signs that you now see spread all over Abington. And one of the varieties says, "This free tree provided by Abington Shade Tree Commission." And another one, and it has other information, but primarily that. And then we have one that says plant trees, and it lists some of the benefits of planting trees. So we give these signs out to anyone who will take them. So you have started to see them popping up wherever you drive in town or walk in town. So we're trying to let people know who maybe don't go on the township website that we have these free tree giveaways. We have a QR code on the signs so they can scan it to get more information or contact us. And we're just trying to plant that seed that trees are really good. So that's been another component of the free tree giveaway.
I love that idea. That's a great idea. It's almost like, a campaign sign for trees.
Yes.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
It's been somewhat of a cool thing too, in that, we've had neighbors, contacting us and saying, well, wait a minute, my neighbor's got a sign. How can I get one? Believe it or not, we're now out of signs and need to purchase more of them. So it's kind of cool. We're not sure what would happen, but it's been kind of the in thing to do.
Yeah, we're the cool kids now.
Wow, that's very commendable.
Are you able to communicate with tree recipients, the people that have picked up a tree? I'm just thinking here in the Delaware Valley, I think we're going into a hot, dry stretch for the next 10 days or so with no rain in sight or nothing of great significance. So if you were to put out the alert like, hey, don't forget to water your tree that you planted 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago, is there a way that you can do that?
Yeah, that's a good question.
For the first several tree giveaways, we have probably email addresses and maybe phone numbers, and that's not something that we have done yet, but that's a really great idea. This past tree giveaway, we contracted with the Arbor Day Association to help organize the tree giveaway. And so what the Arbor Day Foundation does is send out reminders like, the tree giveaway is Saturday. Come pick up your tree, and sends reminders. I don't know the content of all the reminders, but I think that's something that we could probably ask the Arbor Day Foundation to, send out a message like, it's going to be hot and dry, water your trees. But that follow-up piece is really important and probably something that we can work to improve.
Yeah. We have a pretty good social media presence with Instagram and Facebook, and I know those reminders were already there. We put them up last week, just reminding folks. And a lot of the recipients of trees are part of our kind of extended volunteer group, so to speak. They're the ones that really have been interested. It's worth mentioning that when we do give these trees on the day when people pick up their trees on that day, they do get a little 5-minute primer, a little 10-minute instruction. They also receive some documentation about the tree, almost like a tree tag, but it's on an 8.5 by 11 with pictures and instructions. We do talk about watering and whatnot. So that's a big part of this for us. We don't want to see trees.
So you don't use like tree diapers or any of the gator bags or anything like that?
We do make recommendations to folks in our planting within the park system and other public areas. We just within the last 2 cycles have started using the tree
They're
diapers.
fabulous.
I can't even believe it. I mean, it's when I consider running around with my little pickup truck and 50-gallon water tanks when it's 95 degrees, and now we have the tree diapers. So now, this is really the first full summer season that we'll see these in use. We've probably have purchased well over 100. Started with the PHS tree, the tree tenders, bare root tree programs, where we began using them, and have now been trying to put them into any of the park areas, anywhere we're not able to get to these trees, because it's basically volunteer help watering. We really don't have any other assistance there. We're hoping homeowners, of course, would be nearby a hose and be able to water.
And it's interesting how one thing can change the whole paradigm of a successful planting versus, losing half of your plants because you don't have a watering device. And, I was at a place yesterday, a garden, and somebody asked them, you just planted 50 rhododendrons and azaleas. How do you water them up on that hillside? You don't have a hose out here. And he goes, oh, we use buckets from the stream and carry them up. But we try not to plant unless we know that rain is coming. So that's the other thing. They look at the forecasts and they use that as their guide too. So I think that's really fascinating.
We definitely find, and I've found from doing this for these many years, that planting in the fall is just a much more successful option for parks and whatnot. Doing spring plantings, almost always, it's a very high failure rate.
Totally agree with you.
Way to go, yeah.
Yeah, the tree doesn't have to worry about keeping its leaves on because it's dropping them anyway. And it concentrates on that root production during the wintertime. So, yeah, it makes sense.
So we've talked about volunteers, talked about the tree action plan and the ordinances. I'm really getting a sense that things are looking very green and hopeful with a lot of good forward movement and tree-loving energy for Abington Township. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about some of the important alliances that you have. I know you've worked with the Morris Arboretum. I know you've worked with local landscape contractors that have given you input on the ordinances and on the master action plan. But moving forward, what kind of things would you like to see happen in terms of the relationships you have with other organizations and institutions?
We have been very, very fortunate to have these alliances. So we have alliances with, I think I already mentioned, the local watershed organizations, TTF, PERT, and Wissahickon Trails. We have headwaters for all these watersheds in our township. So we have active participation with them. And I think there are many other organizations, and of course the list is too exhaustive to go through. But I do believe that we need to and hope to just continue to grow these relationships and continue to involve them and other parts of the community in reaching the goals of the master tree plan. Things are very hopeful in Abington, and we've been very successful with increasing our shade tree budget. And at the same time, we have this master tree plan, and it's not going to help us if it just sits on a shelf. So right now, we're really working towards developing alliances within the township with the Parks and Rec and commissioners and the township leadership to develop an implementation committee, a steering committee that will help us move forward and decide what are the priorities for 24 to 26 and 27 to 29. And I feel like we do have lots of alliances. And right now we're sort of in this phase of needing to be internal, right? Needing to work within our community with our stakeholders to actually see this plan implemented. The tree giveaway is a great example of one of our priorities for that tree plan, right? One of the categories of the tree plan is to increase planting and trees in residential neighborhoods. But we also have trees in park places. We have trees in the built environment. We have trees with a capacity to absorb stormwater. And so I feel like right now we're in a phase of getting our community on board to actually implement the plan. I don't know that actually answered your question, but I feel that right now we're looking inward, how do we take this great document we have and put it into action?
I think that rounds it out nicely, the way you described it. And I think you always need these alliances around you. You may not be always calling on them, because they're probably being called by other people as well. But at the same time, you're striking a balance between getting to where you need to be and, where you are currently. And you have to decide on how to move forward with or without those organizations. And I like the fact that you're saying you're looking inward, because I think you can go to the people who have taken trees to plant on their property and ask them for statements. What do they think about having the trees offered to them by the township? What does it mean to them as township residents to have free trees available to them 2 times a year, where other townships don't have that opportunity? Those are all wonderful things that can actually bolster what you're doing already. And I love the fact that you're looking inward.
Right.
Yes.
Eva, I think those questions are excellent. And I'm going to follow up with you in an email. I think that would be really helpful educationally in terms of hearing from residents so that we know, but also passing that feedback on to the township so that we continue to receive support, right?
Every time we ask somebody what's their favorite tree, they always go back to their childhood. how many childhoods are you affecting by having people pick up or planting trees in their yard?
Right.
How many hundreds of children, thousands of children are you affecting for the future? You're not just thinking of today. You're not thinking of yesterday. You're thinking of tomorrow too. And that's the whole idea around a tree, that you're not just, it's going to be shade enjoyed by generations from now. And using taxpayer dollars for something like that is not, it's frugal. It's actually frugal because you're conserving your resources.
Yes. And in fact, in our budget request, we talk about that, how any dollar spent on tree supplies and planting trees, it will have an enormous return on our investment.
It kind of reminds me of something that I had an opportunity to see. This is someone that we interviewed before, talking about payback. And, you could say we're going to get 3 times the payback, but it might be 10 times the payback. And you don't even know it's going to be coming because of who it has affected in the long run.
Right.
And inspiring kids to have a lifetime of outdoor interests as opposed to indoor.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you'll be able to resurrect what Trish had as a child of out the door by 8 and home by dinner. You put Abington on a national spotlight.
And look how wonderful she turned out.
I know. I was driving down the street the other day, and there were these 2 girls just walking down the street, and they were maybe 10 years old. I don't know. And I thought, wow, there are kids who are actually outside. How often do you actually see kids outside when you're driving down the street who aren't accompanied by parents or other adults, right?
Yeah.
So I think we've started to lose that culture of spending our childhoods outside.
Well, I like the idea with the master action plan, like you say, and we've just had a nice discussion and massaged it a little bit because, at 44 pages, it's a lot and it's a great work. But I think, as you say, you don't want it up on the shelf collecting dust, and somehow having people look at it regularly and pulling it apart and coming up with the new ideas like we've just discussed. More community input through a survey, as Eva mentioned. It's only going to strengthen it and make it more visible.
It feels like we're coming towards a conclusion. And I just want to really put out there some advice for those who are aspiring to do something like this. So I think some of the keys to our success were, 1, we started small and we built capacity. So when we first started fundraising, it was for small grants that we could manage. And then as we built that capacity, and by capacity, I mean the capacity of the Shade Tree Commission and the volunteers, but also the capacity in the township, who maybe they haven't done this before and they need some time to learn how to do it. So start small and build capacity. Work on being that Rita Stevens who builds consensus, right? Build consensus among your volunteers, your staff, your management, the government agencies, your nonprofits who are associated with your community partners. One example, we just had a report from one of our community partners, the Greater Glenside Civic Association. What they did was partner with us for the spring tree giveaway with the goal of, we want to see 100 trees planted in the Greater Glenside area. And we got a report Tuesday night that in the spring tree giveaway, 95 of 100 trees, their goal, that was met, right? So we're continuing this strategic partnership. This all takes time, and it takes connections, and it takes working with people and meeting them where they're at and where they identify needs. So those things are really important because it takes an entire community to develop and embrace an action plan. So those are some of the key things for us. And I think another vital part of it is education. So we really need to educate the public, the residents, but also the leadership on the importance of tree canopy and ecosystem services. Most people don't know what ecosystem services are, right? They don't look at a tree and say, man, that tree, every time it rains, it absorbs 100 gallons of stormwater. And it then evapotranspires that water up to the atmosphere, right? People don't think like that. So we need to educate them so that they know that trees intercept stormwater, trees clean the air, trees provide shade and reduce energy costs. And I think that if we educate, and it's not just the environment, right? It's economic, environmental, and social, right? So trees improve our well-being. Being around trees reduces stress. So I think that taking a broad approach to all the different benefits of having a robust tree canopy helps to meet people where they are, right? I might not care how much I spend on air conditioning, but I might care about having something green outside my window, right? So I think that that education piece is also really important. Do you think, are there other lessons you've learned from this that you think we could pass forward to others?
No, I think the education piece is a huge part of it. We've found ourselves being able to educate folks when they come to us about trees. And of course, many of these people are interested in trees and they have an interest in learning about trees. So that's been the easy part. The hard part is getting out into the neighborhoods and getting to people who aren't talking about trees or looking at trees. So that's something that we're really going to be working on over this next year or so as we look at opportunities to get out into different areas, into community neighborhoods, community centers. And we actually are piloting a program, basically an Ask the Arborist program. So it's going to be an opportunity for people to come to and ask those questions, not worry about cost of things or get some advice on how they could proceed, with trees. So it's the education part is absolutely the biggest part.
I love the fact that you go out, John, and you show people how to prune a tree, how to plant a tree, how to water it, when you should be watering it. I like the fact that you're out there as an educator. Not only are you people who are in a management position and galvanizing the community, but you're also educating at the same time. And, it's a jack of all trades. You have to be, because in order for everything to be successful, you just have to just keep sharing and all that information that you have. I have to applaud the two of you for all the time that you've put in. Again, these are volunteer positions. People don't realize how many hours people volunteer in their communities. It will be really interesting to see if the government could take a survey as to how many people actually volunteer in their communities and put forth all this type of energy and valuable energy for their communities.
It's worth mentioning for sure, our volunteer group and base has really, I think in many ways, has shifted a bit and certainly has expanded. For instance, this year in particular, in our budget, we're working on employing a consulting arborist. So the township has not had an actual consulting arborist position. And we've generally had arborists, at least one or two, involved in the Shade Tree Commission. It's been a little bit harder for us to connect with an actual certified arborist, but the breadth of experience that we have on our volunteer group is amazing. A whole new generation of folks, which is really what's been very inspiring to me to continue all these years, is a whole new group of younger folks and the way they look at making things happen. So we have a huge set pool of resources from lawyers to marketing folks, other scientists and folks that really have contributed. And I think it's made a big difference.
Absolutely. That's another good point. We try as a Shade Tree Commission to be very welcoming and inclusive. And when I use those terms, if you're a lawyer, if you're a graphic designer, if you're a grant writer, if you just want to plant trees, we will welcome you and we will use your talents. And if you want to use your talents to help us write ordinances or write grants, that's great. And if you just want to plant a tree and put down mulch, we're happy with that too. So I think that has been part of our success.
I was just going to add, before we wrap up, the two takeaways that I have going through the materials. A, the Abington Township website is a resource. So that link will be on the website so that people can find the ordinance and see it firsthand. But it's just a great resource for all kinds of information. And then the second thing is, we talked about this a little bit at the outset, is the master plan, can it be used by other communities? Is it out there in the public domain? Is that all right with you guys?
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah.
Honestly, I can't recite the website address to you, but if you go to Abington Township Shade Tree Commission on Google, we're probably the first link that will come up, and it will bring you to our webpage. And if you scroll down our webpage, You have our urban canopy analysis, the results from that. And then underneath that, there's a link to the master tree plan. So it's publicly available and you can just click on that and download it. And if it's helpful to you, please use it.
And do you have any email address too?
Yeah, our email address, the best way to get us would be, it's just stc@abingtonpa.gov.
Great.
So
Great.
stc@abingtonpa.gov.
We appreciate you.
We appreciate you. We appreciate you.
Thanks for having us. And yeah.
I need to know what their favorite tree is.
I'm always happy to share. I moved to within Abington to a new home about 22 years ago, and I had the pleasure of taking over the responsibility of 2 gigantic white oak trees.
Oh
In my
boy.
yard. It's not a very big yard. It's as many of the properties in Abington are fairly small. It's probably about a third of an acre, and I have 2 about 100-year-old
Wow.
white oak trees. One in particular that grew right into my garage. So it actually hit the roof, started to cause some damage. And of course, this happened over many decades. So I did what any homeowner should do. And I had the roofer adjust my roof. So,
Roofers are so accommodating.
yes, so typically you take a tree like that down, but I kept it and the tree's doing great and the roof is fine. I had that replaced, so everything's good. But white oaks are really almost always the one that strikes me.
Can I have 3?
Yes, you can. Go ahead.
Okay. So in my childhood, in our backyard, we had a maple tree that we used to climb, and that was my favorite tree for a very long time. Right now in my backyard, I have an oak tree that provides beautiful shade. And if I had to pick just one tree, when I hike in the Sierras, there are these ancient bristlecone pines,
Oh my gosh, yes.
and they are just so beautiful and magnificent. And walking through a forest of them is just so unbelievable. It's so peaceful and calm, and it connects you to the earth. So that's a little woo-woo, but I think we're all tree people, so it's okay to be a little woo-woo. So I love those trees. They're just
Wow.
so beautiful.
Pinus aristata. Wow.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you again for being on our podcast and sharing all the wonderful information and all the work that you're doing in Abington Township. We're absolutely delighted to have you on.
It's been a real pleasure to spend this time with you and an honor to be invited to be on your podcast. So thank you. And thank you for the work you do.
I feel like this is also going to be a great amount of information for listeners that one way or another will be inspired to pursue this in their own communities and even share it with the people in their lives that aren't necessarily tree people. But, the light's going to go on wherever you live worldwide, that you got to volunteer your time and then hope that the benefits come back in some fashion, which I'm almost sure they will. So thank you as well.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
The Planet Trillion Trees podcast is edited by Andromedan Recordings in Hollywood, California.